The Russians believed they were making progress in the Orekhov region of Zaporizhia. Their Ukrainian opponents were retreating. The Russians thought they simply needed to advance, and the territory would be theirs. Rather than fleeing, they were luring the Russian forces into a trap, biding their time before striking back to eliminate them. Orekhov remained secure, and if Ukraine executes its strategy well, the city could serve as a launch point for a counteroffensive against Vladimir Putin's forces. Russia's push toward Orekhov began on July 7th. That is when reports highlighted that the southern front of the Ukraine war had rapidly intensified, creating movement that seemed unfavorable for Ukraine. A Russian surge had begun, with Putin's forces initiating a large-scale offensive near Orekhov. The entire line of contact in Orekhov became perilous as Russia pushed forward. The battalion commander of Ukraine's 65th Separate Mechanized Brigade confirmed this. The commander mentioned that Russia was deploying small tactical assault groups of 3 or 4 fighters to carry out small-scale attacks against Ukraine's positions. Meanwhile, those operators were supported by larger forces, forming a wide arc across the Orekhov front. Russia was utilizing every asset it had at its disposal. FPV drones, heavy artillery, aerial reconnaissance, and ground assaults were all used by Putin's forces to capture the crucial city. And it seemed to be effective. Russia made gains, and it appeared that Ukraine's defenders were being forced to retreat. The Russian approach was slow and methodical. As Putin's troops pushed forward, they destroyed Ukrainian ammunition depots and equipment, according to reports. The attack seemed relentless. Each time Ukraine repelled a group of Russian attackers, another would replace them. Gradually, it seemed Russia was claiming Orekhov, or so Putin believed. The truth, however, was that Russia's forces were playing right into Ukraine's hands. As Putin's troops advanced, believing they would soon control the city, Ukraine was quietly preparing. And on July 19th, Ukraine launched a devastating counterattack against Russia's forces, reclaiming lost territory. The basic details come from a July 19th RBC Ukraine report. It states that Ukraine used a combination of maneuverable defense strategies and counterattacks to decimate Russia's invading forces in Orekhov. Each retreat was actually a repositioning, setting up perfect ambush positions. As Putin's forces advanced, they fell into Ukraine's trap. Ukrainian forces then turned and attacked from all sides. The Russian soldiers didn't stand a chance. The spokesperson for Ukraine's Southern Defense Forces, Vladislav Voloshin shared some details. "I do not want to disclose much information, but we have regained certain positions in some areas," he said. In particular, near Orekhov, where our units are operating quite successfully, we've reclaimed some positions, not many, but we are not only trying to hold the territory, but also to launch counterattacks and small offensives, and we are having success. This was significant. Previously lost positions were now back in Ukrainian hands. Moreover, Ukraine learned that Putin's forces were vulnerable to being drawn into traps. With Orekhov, Ukraine might have discovered a tactic that could help reclaim other small settlements in the future. Although Voloshin was hesitant to provide further details, more information comes from Newsky's coverage of the events in Orekhov. It states that Ukraine's counterattack occurred on the night of July 18th and into the early hours of July 19th. The strike was quick and well-coordinated, involving multiple Ukrainian military units. The 65th Separate Mechanized Brigade, the 118th Brigade, and the Airborne Brigade worked alongside local territorial defense forces to strike in the northeastern part of Orekhov, taking control of the area while under the threat of enemy rockets and artillery. The first part of Ukraine's counteroffensive focused on setting the trap, positioning Russia's forces just where they wanted them. It wasn't until 2:30 a.m. on July 19th that the real battle began. Ukraine's forces reversed course and launched a fierce counterattack. By then, Ukraine had successfully lured Russia's forces out of their defensive positions, leaving them exposed. Putin's troops tried to block Ukraine's advancing forces, but failed. In a battle that continued until dawn, Ukraine emerged victorious. By the end of the fighting, Russia had lost multiple infantry fighting vehicles, pieces of military equipment, and at least 36 soldiers were wounded by Ukraine's counterattack. The retreat was a ruse. Putin's forces soon realized the danger of underestimating Ukraine's troops. According to Newsky, Ukraine had been planning this for several days. While regaining control of the northeastern part of Orekhov was a priority, Ukraine saw this as an opportunity. By decimating Russian forces, Ukraine aimed to create a supply pocket, which would allow it to rotate troops in the region and facilitate counter-battery operations. Coordination was essential for the success of the counterattack. Ukraine used Mavic quadcopters equipped with thermal imagers to monitor Russian movements. These drones likely played a key role in luring Putin's forces into the trap. Once the Russian soldiers were in position, Ukraine launched a combination of FPV drones and artillery. This heavy barrage of fire created a smoke screen, enabling Ukraine's mechanized units to advance as Russia's forces struggled to fend off the very weapons they had used in their earlier attacks on Orekhov. Ukraine struck quickly and forcefully. Swift assaults on Russia's flanks trapped small groups of Putin's soldiers and pincer movements from which there was no escape. Newsky also reports that Ukraine used Starlink communication channels for emergency evacuations and to assist its medical teams during the battle. Training played a significant role in the success of the counterattack. Ukraine's operators had perfected the use of FPV drones for kamikaze attacks on Russia's mechanized units, combined with portable air defense systems mounted on manpad systems to clear the skies of Russian reconnaissance drones. These FPV drones had a massive impact. Ukraine's drone operators continued to improve, exchanging experiences after every battle and even taking online courses to optimize drone usage. All of this training has made Ukraine's forces sharper and more effective. As witnessed in Orekhov, this training enabled Ukraine to launch highly effective attacks on Russia's forces. When we say devastating, we mean it. Newsky reports that official figures show Ukraine's forces emerged decisively victorious over Russia. Ukraine didn't emerge unscathed. 7 of its soldiers were wounded during the Orekhov counterattack, with 1 soldier tragically losing his life. But the damage inflicted on Putin's forces was far worse. In addition to the 36 Russian casualties mentioned earlier, Ukraine destroyed 5 armored vehicles, including a tank, and several Russian FPV drones. As of now, Orekhov's local residents are assisting Ukrainian defenders, helping to clear the area, evacuate the wounded, and provide intelligence for future operations. Putin will be furious. The northeastern part of Orekhov was supposed to be his. That's the impression he had likely been receiving since July 7th when his forces began advancing in the region. For nearly 2 weeks, Russia seemed to be pushing forward as Ukraine retreated. Putin would have been pleased. The daily reports from Orekhov likely painted a picture of an impending Russian victory. Then, Ukraine sprang its trap. In a single night, Russia lost dozens of soldiers and its grip on the northeastern section of Orekhov, which it had spent nearly 2 weeks trying to capture. Russia thought it was winning, but Ukraine had other plans. But this leads us to the critical question: why does Orekhov matter so much? Newsky offers one explanation, suggesting that Orekhov is much more than just a village or city. It is a logistical hub that Russia has been attempting to capture to create a southern bridgehead. If Russia controls Orekhov, it can link to several territories it already holds, such as Melitopol, Tokmak, and Guliapol, Adding Orekhov would provide Russia with control over vital roads in and around Zaporizhia. This would allow supplies and troops to move easily from Melitopol to Orekhov, reinforcing Putin's struggling troops elsewhere in Zaporizhia. Orekhov holds immense strategic value for Putin. However, it's also crucial for Ukraine. Remember back to the summer of 2023, when Ukraine launched a massive counteroffensive against Russia. Ukraine had prepared meticulously, gathering 12 brigades, approximately 1,000 troops, all equipped with modern Western armor, according to Le Monde. These brigades underwent 5 weeks of training from their Western allies before the counteroffensive, joining 115,000 troops already assigned to the operation.